please stop sending questions, and the ones I cannot answer now, I will answer them tomorrow. By the way, regarding tomorrow, I remind you that the meeting tomorrow is going to take place 2 hours earlier. The reason for those who are here is that there is going to be a classical music concert here, starting at 3 o'clock. Starting at 4 o'clock, I think. 3 o'clock. You are most welcome to come. I think it's a charity type of thing. I think it's $25. I'm not really involved with it. We are just offering the venue. Hugh. Yesterday was the last day of classes for the school year. Phew. As I become adjusted to my new schedule, I realize how stressed out I've been over my classes. For me, work is a strong trigger for the separate self and the feeling of personal, willful effort towards a goal. I think effort towards a goal is fine, but somehow I get too stressed sometimes, and I think that has to do with the separate self getting involved in what I am doing. I think I'm a person who's quite sensitive to stress, and I don't want to spend my life in a career that has me constantly exhausted. However, there are few career opportunities in lying on the beach all day. So I have to learn how to deal with my stress and hopefully uproot the sense of separation that causes it. Do you have any comments about how to deal with stress as it relates to the separate self? Don't indulge in this thought that you are a separate self. That will get rid of the straits that relate to this thought. And question this belief that you are a separate consciousness. Not when you are stressed, but during these moments when you are available to investigate. You have to become interested in this process. If you're not interested, you will become interested at some point. But what is important, the most important, is to become interested. In other words, as long as you have a problem in your life, like, I don't like my job, I get stressed. How can I liberate myself from this problem? You are not yet in the right direction. First, you have to understand that, let's assume you have a different job that you like more, and that is not stressful. Or that you have no job at all, and you can lie on the beach all day because your uncle or great uncle has just died and left you with some inheritance. Are you so certain you will be happy? Are you free from aging? Are you free from illnesses? Are you free from accidents? Are you free from being betrayed in relationships? Are you so certain you would be happy? Think about it. What is it that can liberate you absolutely from all these problems? Don't seek the solution to a specific problem. Be interested in finding the solution that will apply to all of your problems. See that you wouldn't have any problems if you wouldn't identify with a separate person. That may shift your interest away from solving your problem with your job to being interested in the great question of what am I? The great question, am I limited? Mick, could you please speak about the nature of beliefs? It is evident that many beliefs are adopted from our parents, teachers, etc. from an early age and may remain largely unquestioned. Are all beliefs the same in that their level of ignorance or their lack of evidence or verification are the same? Well, there are two kinds of beliefs. There are beliefs that relate to phenomena, and there are beliefs that relate to consciousness. Beliefs that relate to phenomena can be verified or falsified through phenomenal experience. It is important to question the belief we may have about phenomena. And that's this honest questioning of the belief we have about phenomena is really the backbone of modern science. In parallel to this, there is philosophy, real philosophy, which would be the questioning of the belief we have about that which is not a phenomenon, consciousness, reality. To investigate these beliefs in the light of an experience here also, experientially, in the light of the experience of consciousness. So not all beliefs are the same because they can be divided in those two categories, with science and philosophy, if you will, being the two branches that deal with each set of belief. Then he goes on, he said, are all beliefs the same? I just answered. If they are the same, it's also evident that they can result in very different actions. A subtle belief may result in a harmless action, whereas another belief may result in crude action. For example, taking the lives of those whose religious beliefs are different in the name of a god. Since these beliefs apparently arise from consciousness, in consciousness, do they have any association with truth? Ultimately, ignorance is a choice and the creation of consciousness. So there is an association there. Liberating oneself from ignorance is also the undoing by consciousness of what has been done by consciousness. It's a return home. It's like the trajectory of a musical piece, starting from the keynote, going back to the keynote at the end. Or a theatrical play, beginning and an end. Or a game being played. So yes, they are associated with truth, including ignorance. But they are not a direct expression of truth. Ignorance itself, the belief to be a separate entity, is in direct connection with truth. And then from this position of ignorance, ignorant beliefs, ignorant deeds are born. Whereas enlightened behavior and enlightened thought comes directly from truth. Directly, without the middleman, so to speak, the intermediary ignorance. Well, I'm going to answer the question of Etienne and the question of Sarmin, David, Diego, and Lois. I'm going to answer them tomorrow. And any other questions that may still arise on my computer. So Etienne, when I ask myself, is consciousness limited? I answer with points such as these. 1. Consciousness is limited by my physical perspective. For instance, it can only be aware of the things seen with these eyes which face a particular direction. Okay, let's address this objection. You say consciousness is limited by my physical perspective in this very moment because it can only be aware of the things seen with these eyes. But what about one moment before? Are you saying that it was a different consciousness one moment before that was perceiving from a different perspective and through a different sense organ, for instance? Obviously not. You wouldn't challenge the fact that it is the same consciousness that was aware a moment before of other things, from a different perspective. Although, in the current moment, all you are being aware of as what your eyes are seeing in this direction. But because you feel that you have the memory available of this previous experience, you don't challenge the fact that it is the same consciousness that is aware now and that was aware then. But the memory is no proof. What if you had forgotten? If you had forgotten what you were perceiving 1 year ago, the same day, at the same time, would that mean that you were not conscious at the time? In other words, the point I'm making is that to remember a content of consciousness or the fact of being conscious in a different circumstances is not mandatory for us to be open to the possibility that we were conscious, although you have no recollection of it. What if, in this very moment, in a different mode, you were also conscious of the thoughts of Francis and the perceptions of Francis? but you don't remember in real time, you see. Just as you don't remember, in most cases, across time, although you are conscious across time, the same consciousness across time, what if you were conscious across minds, and in most cases, with a possible exception of telepathy or events of that kind, under normal circumstances, you wouldn't remember. The fact that you don't remember across space or across minds doesn't imply that you are not conscious across minds and across time. This belief that you are limited is precisely your limitation. I repeat, this belief that you are limited is your limitation. You are not really limited. You simply believe to be limited, and this attachment, your attachment to this belief, is your limitation. You have to understand that your argument is not valid. Let me address this argument from a more abstract perspective. What you perceive, your limited physical perspective, you are making the claim that what you perceive limits is proof of the limitation of that which perceives. If you think twice about it, how could it be possible that any absurd phenomenon would give us information on the perceiving agent? Like a picture taken by a photographer giving us information on the color of the eyes of the photographer, or on the length of his hair, or on the condition of his liver. I mean, perhaps if you see a lot of Jack Daniels bottle in the background, but I think I've made my point. The fallacy of this reasoning is to believe that that which is perceived in consciousness can give us information on the nature of the perceiving consciousness. That's a fallacy. It's because we identify consciousness with an object, which it isn't. Objection number 2. Consciousness is limited to my attention. It is only the things that I am focusing on, such as a television show, that appear in consciousness. Well, that is even more mistaken as an argument, because it doesn't even limit your mind. If I focus my mind onto a movie, it doesn't imply that even my human mind is limited to movies, to the perception of movies. I can taste also the popcorn on the table and the Coke in the glass while watching the movie. So even on the level of mind, the fact that I'm focusing on the movie doesn't limit the mind to the movie. And so even less does it limit the consciousness that perceives the mind. Objection number 3. Consciousness seems to disappear when I go to sleep. I like the use of the verb seems. So you seem not to be really convinced by your own argument. But let's take your argument. You are offering as a proof that consciousness disappears a so-called experience of its disappearance. Now, tell me, what is it that experiences the disappearance of consciousness? In order to experience the disappearance of an object, I need to experience first the presence of the object, followed by the absence of the object. That's what the experience of the disappearance is. If I experience only the presence of the object, I will never experience a disappearance. In order to experience a disappearance, I need to experience a presence followed by an absence. Now, if I claim that I experience a disappearance of consciousness, I am making implicitly the claim that I experience the presence of consciousness and that then I experience the absence of consciousness. Now, what is it that experiences the absence of consciousness? Is it not consciousness itself? Now, if consciousness is experiencing the absence of consciousness, then there is no absence of consciousness. Are you getting my... So, the point is that the absence of consciousness is not experientiable. That's correct? The absence of consciousness is not experientiable, and therefore not being experientiable, the claim that it can be experientiable goes down the drain. Then he says, I expect that you will say that all the things I mentioned above are things that appear within or to consciousness. And so they are not limitations of consciousness. Yes, I said it. But rather limitations of the content of consciousness. Yes. But then, does that mean that consciousness is different to what appears in it? Is there a line between consciousness and the things that appear within it? Yes. Let me show you this line. Let's say I'm daydreaming and I'm thinking of a herd of unicorns in my daydream. And then all of a sudden, I realize, oh, I was just daydreaming. I was watching this beautiful herd of unicorns. So we have here two thoughts or two phenomena experience. First, the herd of unicorns, and then the thought, oh, I just became aware that I was daydreaming, that I was projecting, that my mind was projecting this image. What happened between these two events? This experience that I express by saying I became aware that I was daydreaming, I became conscious. Something happens between these two thoughts. There was a line there. This line is very narrow, extremely narrow. How long did it take to become conscious? Either I was conscious that I was dreaming or I wasn't. There was a line there. During this line, could I say that I wasn't conscious? I cannot say that. Because it was not somebody else than me who became aware that I was daydreaming. It was me. I was there, becoming conscious, realizing that I was daydreaming. It was not somebody else than me. Now, at that moment, I was no longer, you would agree that I was no longer daydreaming. And I was not yet expressing the thought, I just became aware that I was daydreaming. I was in between. There was, in other words, there was no content of consciousness in this hairline moment. Because the previous content had ceased to appear. And the new content hadn't appeared yet. So it was a contentless moment in which I was there, realizing, understanding, becoming aware. In this moment, I was revealing myself as the substance, as the intelligence that stands under the mind projections, the thoughts, as that which understands the contentless presence